Welcome everybody. I'm Joe Moses, and this is a presentation on FreeNAS 9.3, which is an open source storage distribution. So, I'm going to talk about minimum requirements to use it, some of the use cases where I've actually used it, and might give you some ideas where you might want to use it. We'll go through an install. I actually did an install on my laptop using VMware. It took 13 minutes. We're not going to go through the whole thing. We can accelerate through it, but I just want to show you how easy it is to install it. Then I want to talk about my actual production server, what I'm using right now, and look under the hood of FreeNAS. So look at the web interface as well as the console interface. Real quick, give you some idea of how it looks, how it works. So FreeNAS, as I said, is an open source distribution based on FreeBSD, which is a Unix distribution, and it's operated by FreeNAS.org. Yeah, FreeNAS.org is the website. And the distribution, the latest version is about 350 maybe megabytes. You can download it, install it. As I said, they recommended you install it on real hardware, but you can virtualize it for testing purposes and whatnot. These guys, actually, a company called XI actually has sort of taken ownership of the source code, and they're maintaining it, but as well they are selling embedded systems, basically their own hardware with FreeBSD installed on it, and selling that to help finance their operation. So that's how they're maintaining this code base. So the minimum requirements are actually pretty modest. Hey, welcome guys. Got a few more people coming in. Just talking about FreeNAS and the minimum requirements to get it going is the recommended minimum currently, because now the latest flavor is 64-bit only. So they're recommending a multi-core 64-bit processor, Intel recommended, and an 8 gigabyte flash drive to install the FreeNAS on. Whatever drive you decide to install the operating system on, it's going to take up the whole drive. You can't partition the drive. You've got to just dedicate a drive to it. So the recommended way to go, and what I've done, is just used a 8 gig or whatever separate flash drive or USB drive. They recommend a minimum of 8 gigs of RAM. I'm running it in a virtual machine with 2 gigs, and the real minimum is like 1.7 gigs of actual RAM. But if you want to do things like deduplication, if you want to do compression, which this can do, you need more memory. So they recommend 8 gigs. In my production server, which I'll show you towards the end, I'm running 16 gigs, and it's pretty phenomenal. And of course, you need at least one disk attached. And definitely do not use RAID hardware, because ZFS, the file system, does it all for you. And if you put RAID hardware in the middle of it, it can cause serious problems. So they definitely recommend don't use RAID hardware. You don't need it. But if you want to have the equivalent of RAID 5, you need 4 disks, and you can do it. And you need, of course, one network port, because you need to share it out. It's a network attached storage. You need a network port, NIC port. So let's talk about use cases. I don't know, anybody familiar with XenServer? It's like a VMware ESXi competitor, right? It was open source, then Citrix Systems bought whatever. They bought something, brought the developers in-house, put their own label on it, and then Citrix was distributing their own version of XenServer. Well, back in 2008, I was working for Citrix, and I was playing with XenServer, and they talked about how great it was. You could do HA pairing and all this stuff. But what they didn't tell you is to do HA pairing, you need an iSCSI device. You need iSCSI storage. So in my home lab, I had several servers. I installed it's not ESX, but VMware, XenServer. I installed XenServer on it, and I needed an iSCSI device. So I was like, man, I'm not spending no thousands of dollars on this iSCSI storage device just to make this work. So I discovered that FreeNAS could let you configure iSCSI. So back then there was a version 0.7, and it's a 32-bit version. I actually had my 2 servers running XenServer. I had an old Pentium D or Double D, whatever it was, PC. I ran a VMware image of this FreeNAS and set up iSCSI sharing, set up an iSCSI volume, whatever, connected the VMware, the Zen server to it, and I had HA pairing going, and it was really cool. So I got it to work, and it's actually really cool to be able to do that. Right, very low budget, didn't cost me anything, and it worked flawlessly. So it was really great. So that's one of the, say, use cases. You know, you need some specific type of storage, or you want to do some kind of sharing. It's a great, you know, storage that you can, you know, put up, set up very quickly. Second use case, and maybe the funnest, is, anybody heard of Plex? Plex, you guys know about Netflix or Apple TV or any of these other media streaming services? So what Plex is, you can install it pretty much on any flavor operating system, you know, Windows, OS X, even Linux, I think. But you can also install it on Plex. So, you can also install it on FreeNAS. So the concept is that once you have your FreeNAS storage set up, then you can install these plugins on top that connect to the storage, right? And they can share or not share or whatever that storage. So what Plex will do, and I'll show you how that's working towards the end. You know, the video of my own thing. I'm double NATed at home, and I don't control the first NAT router, so I can't access my stuff. Otherwise, I could access my Plex remotely if it wasn't for that. But so Plex lets you share all your multimedia, like for instance, videos, movies, you know, torrents, whatever you downloaded, music, whatever, pictures. You know, you can store everything on your FreeNAS storage that you carved out for it, and then now you can share that wirelessly over your network, either to other browsers or to wireless devices. And if you have a Samsung Smart TV, there's a Plex player for that. So you can just install the Plex player and you can watch all your content on your TV. Don't need anything else. So it's really very powerful, and I'll show you that towards the end. That was my second use case, and it's phenomenal for that. The third use case is I don't know if you guys have, you know, laptops at home, maybe older ones, or maybe, I don't know, wives, children are using older laptops. You want to maintain them, maintain the images. So another one of the plugins that's available for Plex it's called CrucibleWDS. It's a backup and recovery plugin. And again, you could also install this, you know, sort of natively on your own server or whatever. But what it does is it allows you to back up your system and store it on FreeNAS in storage there. And then if there's any issues, you can restore very quickly over the network. And it uses, you have to create sort of a custom flash drive, boot up with this flash drive, and then it connects you to the CrucibleWDS. And if you know, just log in and a couple of keystrokes, and you're either uploading or downloading to your system. So I've done this several times with Windows XP, Windows 7, and supposedly it supports OS X, but I haven't tried it yet. But so it's really a great product, and you know, it's open source, it's free, and it works really good. And you can do multiple PCs at the same time if you had multiple PCs you want to image. The fourth use case, anybody heard of, do you guys know what TiVo is? You've heard of TiVo? TiVo is just a DVR, so a digital video recorder. You know, in the old days, you'd have to plug a tape into your VCR to record something, set a timer or whatever, or be there. So with DVR, you can record whenever the show's on TV, it records it onto a hard disk in this little box, and then you can watch it anytime. Now, I have the second generation TiVo, which it's great. It's got 2 tuners. I can watch one show and I'm recording another one, but they're up to, like, I don't know, maybe 7th generation now, and the newer ones can do streaming like Plex from the TiVo box. But this Series 2 cannot do that, right? Which I'm trying to solve that problem. And the way I solve that is, and I didn't do this on my own, there's a whole community for FreeBSD, FreeNAS, that's helping out. But there's 2 programs. One's called KMTTG and the other one's called CIFS. But basically, one lets you copy all your videos from the TiVo box to Plex, or to the storage on FreeNAS, and then the other one lets TiVo see those videos, that content, and copy it down, so you can stream it down to your TiVo box. So in my case, I really only care about backing this stuff up to Plex, so then I can watch it on my iPad, for instance, because the Series 2 doesn't support that. The newer ones do, but the Series 2 doesn't. So this is my fourth use case. So I don't know if you're starting to see sort of picture here. You know, as I said, you have this FreeNAS storage device, this network attached storage in your environment, in your home or whatever. Once you have that storage, now you're able to utilize it in different ways, right? Now it's not just fixed with one application. You have all these plugins that do different things, and you can utilize that, and it makes things really easy and really fun. I mean, you can do a lot of cool things. And you don't have to have the server on all the time. You know, when I call it flexing the Plex, flex the Plex, right? When I want to flex the Plex, we just fire it up. It does take about 5 minutes to boot up, but once it's up and running, I've had up to 5 simultaneous streams going. You know, 2 kids on iPads, I was on a PC, and another person was on a Mac, you know, wired Mac, and we're watching 4 simultaneous streams off this server. My server, you'll see, I beefed it up a little bit, but it's definitely really great, I think. So, freenas.org, this is, as I said, this last use case, I didn't have to invent it. Somebody actually already did it, figured out how to do it, and there's instructions there. So I just want to say, you know, you can feel comfortable if you're a newbie or you want to try it out, you're not really sure. FreeNAS.org, there's a forum there with a lot of help, and a lot of people done stuff, then you can read what they've done. And this is what I follow to get that thing set up. And so this large active community can help you. So if you guys aren't too bored, I want to just break out of here and go into what an install looks like. And we'll just fast forward through this, but this is kind of what it looks like. It took 13 minutes, 13 and a half minutes. I burnt a CD, DVD with FreeNAS on it, and I'm booting up from an external CD. It took a couple seconds for it to detect the disk, and once it did, oops. It's, you know, just do the typical thing. I gave it 2 gigs of RAM, 1 processor, boot it up, and a grub installer kicks in. You only need to give it 8 gigs of RAM, 8 gigs of memory for the disk, right? But since it's not, it's thin provisioned, doesn't matter. The default for VMware is 20 gigs, so it has up to 20 gigs. You just go through a few steps here, give it a password, say install, give it a password, and it starts decompressing this file. There's a big file in there. It takes a while to decompress it. And once it decompresses the file, it starts to install it. There we go. And then it needs a reboot. After the reboot, it comes back up. And here it's creating a cryptological key for your SSH. It's a military grade key. And then here's the, whoops. Here is the, the console. I don't know, I guess it got moved. Oh, here we go. This is what the console looks like. You can run it headless. That means you don't need to have a video card in your server. But since I'm running from VMware, the VMware CLI pops up and you can see it here. So there are some console command lines where you could, you know, configure your network card, configure DNS, configure gateways, stuff like that if you need to. And it's pretty straightforward setup. So that's how easy it is to set up. If you're doing it virtual, you will have to go into VMware just as a tip, create, add a drive. So you can add another 20 gig drive. Let's say if you're just playing with it, it's thin provision, so it's not going to take up 20 gigs right away. Add a 20 gig drive to that virtual machine, and then when you reboot, when you go into the web configurator, it'll see that storage, and then you can actually allocate that storage from that new drive. So that's install. And now, what does my server look like? I got really lucked out. I was looking for a 1U server that had a bunch of drive bays. And I was on eBay, and I saw there was a Riverbed 1050, brand new. It must have been in cold storage. It was brand new, but never used. Dude had hundreds of them, whatever. I don't know how he got them, whatever. They didn't come with any memory and no operating system, but they were Riverbeds. He wanted $79 for them, plus shipping from the US. I bought two for $49 each. Luckily, I did a whatever, make an offer, and whatever. I had to ship them to New York, and then from New York I shipped them to Poland. And I upgraded the came with a dual core 1.86 gigahertz processor, a Xeon. And for another $12, I was able to buy a quad core processor. I bought two of them because I have two of these machines. So I bought a quad core 2.22 processor, swapped them out, and I added 16 gigs of RAM. So that's my box. It's pretty BA. Now, one thing that it came with, and because it was Riverbed, it's meant to be an embedded WAN accelerator appliance. It came with a 2 gig. They call it I don't know if you guys heard of this, eUSB flash. So basically, inside your server, inside the motherboard, there might be a 9-pin USB port, right? That's just kind of bare. They have these eUSB devices that can plug into that. And this one came with one, 2 gigs. Now, even though FreeNAS recommends you have 8 gigs, I installed FreeNAS onto this 2 gig flash card, and that's what I'm using. And that's all I have on there, FreeNAS. So it's working fine. And I also have 4 2 terabyte hard drives in those 4 bays, running ZFS. It's equivalent to RAID 5, so it gives me 6 terabytes usable. And if you guys want more information of what I've actually done, there's a couple of links I can share with you. One is my website, www.N90X.info, where I've got a website with some of the videos and information there. And also on YouTube, I have a YouTube channel where I'm talking about some of these things, and it's on YouTube. It's NetScaler Trainer, one word, NetScaler Trainer. So if you just go into YouTube, type in NetScaler Trainer, maybe even Riverbed, you should be able to find my channel. But if you go to N90X.info, there's links to my videos on YouTube. And so now I want to share with you a little video. Since I couldn't get direct access to it, that was my goal, was to actually connect to it from here. But I want to show you some of the plugins, at least the 2 that I talked about today. So here's the web console. So once you install it, FreeNAS will give you an IP address, sort of a default IP address based upon what it senses in the network. So you can type in that IP address, and you can get access to the web interface. And just going to log in. And here's the web interface, what it looks like. I'm kind of just going through some of the tabs. Boot shows you all the different versions. It automatically backs up when there's an update. When you update the firmware, it'll automatically back it up, and you can always boot into a different firmware if something happened. Certificates, network settings, storage. Here's some of the volumes that I got set up. I'm going to show you that a little bit later. Services, right? So if you're turning on CIFS or SAMBA sharing, you can turn that on Apple Share, or all the different shares. There's also this diagnostics or reporting stuff. which is pretty standard in a lot of Linux distributions also, but in FreeBSD they got it. Now here's CrucibleWDS. So I don't know if you saw that. Once you have it installed, and I'm not going to lie to you, each one of these plugins, you've got to do a little bit of research on how to do it. What's the process for FreeNAS? Because it's going to be different than if you just installed it, just say directly on a PC. But it's not that hard. I mean, it takes some time. It took me a few hours to figure out not so much how to install this, but how to actually make the boot flash card for the laptops. That was the hardest part. And actually, it wasn't that hard. The hard part was I needed a real Windows machine to actually run this batch file, because I tried to do it in a virtual machine and it didn't work. But anyways, that's just like a tip for you guys if you get decided to do this. So once you install it, you may not know where is it. You assign it an IP address, but it's not just the IP address. It's a port number and something else. So when you come into the web interface, you can click on the plugin, and you can click where it says click here to access it. Once you do that, it's really good to just set up a bookmark. Because you see it's, well, you may not be able to see it, but it's some long, in this case it's like whatever, some 5-digit port number / login, whatever. But here it is, it's interface. I forgot that it's case sensitive. It's case sensitive. But so now Critical has its own web interface, right? So once you log in, you can take a look at Critical. This is just a kind of overview. You've probably seen some backup softwares before, or whatever, remote backup and restore. But I created a couple of machines, a couple of hosts that were backed up. Here's where they are. Here's where it stores it. You can actually do what's called on demand. So you don't even have to register the laptop. You can just say, just on demand, back this machine up, right? So what I did was, as an example, obviously for my kids, they have older XP machines. Once I had them solid, I backed them up, backed up their images so that I knew, hey, if something happens, I could at least restore to that point. When I purchased my work laptop, I knew that I had some brand new image on it. I backed that up here before I even turned it on. So I know that when I go to sell it, I'm going to restore the original image, and then somebody else, when they turn it on, they're going to get that brand new PC feel, right? Because it's going to prompt you for, all the brand new PC stuff. So just the different information about the host. These are some different images. I'll go to you can create groups, you can create all kinds of different stuff. There's some of the images. So, a couple of XP images. I've got an easy peasy. I installed it on one of these laptops as a test, and then I backed it up in case I want to just, pull it on. I was playing with a flash card in one of the drives, and compressed down to less than 2 gigs. The whole easy peasy distribution. And then you can define users if you want to have multiple users accessing it. So I know some people at, say, PC shops are using this. A customer comes in and they want to work on the PC. They might back up the drive first, just in case, before they do any kind of work on it. In case something gets borked, they can always restore it for the customer. Or they often have, like, say, a base image of something. So a customer comes in, let's say their hard drive crashed, they put in a new hard drive and they can quickly install a new version of the OS for them. So here's Plex. Same thing. I went into the FreeNAS interface for the plugin. So for the first time, you might go there and say launch Plex, and then it pops up. So here you can see my Plex server. I'm in the movies. This on deck is what I've been watching. Here it's sort of, my movies are sort of alphabetically. So I got kids shows here and whatever, starting with 101 Dalmatian. And then kid shows you can sort, all kinds of different ways, by poster, by details, description, whatever. I'm just kind of going through this, and here it's listed by recently released. So the latest torrents, guys. I'm saying, whatever was latest, I just uploaded, and I'll show you how to get it on the system. Right, I'll show you that later on. But this is how Plex is looking. It's really fantastic. I mean, if you ever, I know there's some Polish on-demand video streaming services, right? I don't know, you guys probably, I can't remember, my wife uses them to watch some detective TV shows, whenever, and it's a similar kind of interface. So here's, there's no sound, but this is Ride Along 2, Kevin Hart's latest movie. Just a little snippet to show you. And of course it's got the Chinese subtitles. I mean, somebody from China posted it for me. And you can specify, so let's say you're on a smaller device or you're on a slow connection. You'll see in the corner there the kind of scroll bars, what do you call that, the equalizer. You can actually specify, hey, don't play it at the original encoding, lower the encoding, right? So it will take up less bandwidth. I think I'm going to pop over there and you'll see it. I don't know, maybe, did I do it? It was already, so yeah, so you can do, there's all kinds of stuff you can do with this. When you add new videos, new content, you can just say update now. That little sort of, yeah, this little thing right here, this sort of curvy thing, update now, and it'll update the content. Here I am in my music collection, or whatever I posted. So you can stream music, right? You know, kind of makes no sense to stream, but let's say you're at your PC, you want to stream some music, you open up a browser, connect to your Plex, stream the music in the background, you know, machine's on anyways. But books, whatever it be, book on tape or whatever music or whatever, training information, language, learn a new language. But the cool thing is everything's centralized. You have your library centralized, all your media, videos, music, photos, all that kind of stuff can be right there. And you know, it doesn't have to be on all the time. But the cool thing about Plex is you can, if you control your network, you can actually allow it to share it out, right? Using Plex's own software. And that's kind of cool. So you could be on the road, connect to your Plex, put in a password, and access your content. So here's just audio. Back to the movies. So you can create different folders. This is some training videos. I've created a folder for my training videos. And oh, the thing is, one thing about that's cool about Plex is that it's cool and it's not so cool. That is, once you put something on there, Plex will automatically go out to the internet looking for the metadata. So movie posters, synopsises, you know, I don't know, what's it called, Rotten Tomato rating. It'll actually, if you wanted to, it'll pull that stuff down for you. Makes it very easy. But here's some content here. This is some training stuff, which really is not that popular. So it sometimes pulls down posters for the content that doesn't make sense. That's not what that is. But that's the only drawback. You can always go in and change it. You can edit any of the metadata. And put whatever you want in there. So here's just a training video that I popped open to show you guys. And then I think I go to another one. You know, that has the wrong metadata, but it's still another training video. This is in that folder. What else? Some home videos, you know, YouTube videos, pictures, whatever. So this is really, it's really cool stuff. I mean, it takes a little while to install it, but you know, it's not that hard. It's really not that hard. Now here, I want to show you how I connect to it. So the Plex storage is shared as a SAMBA or CIFS share, right? SAMBA, CIFS, whatever, it's all synonymous. And if once you created everything up, right, you have to access it to copy your content to that volume, right? And here's how I do it from a Mac. SMB and the IP address of the share, and it's all really pretty secure, locked down. Need a username and password. And once you get in there, you have a pretty standard file system. You know, what you'd be used to seeing. You know, there's my file system. So, you know, just like what you saw before, like TV shows, movies, family movies. I've created a folder for each one of those things, and that's what you saw on Plex. Plex, well, not automatically. You have to just say, hey, I have a new folder. It's called Family Videos. Point it to this folder. That's where my family videos are. And then it does all the stuff behind the scenes by itself. So that's how it's working. And so there's the file. So look, if you didn't want to run Plex, you just wanted to use FreeNAS as your storage, you could, and then you could access it this way, go into a folder, double click on it, and it would stream over your network to your whatever VLC or whatever you're playing. You could do it that way too, right? That's really low tech. But with Plex, it just makes it so much easier, right? It's much more easier and nicer interface to do that. And also you can share it. You could have multiple people in the house on multiple devices accessing the library without having to mess with file directories and accidentally deleting something. They're using the Plex viewer. Let me just show you this in case you guys are interested. This is just a picture of the plugins, and all these plugins are put into a jail, so they're all isolated from each one another. So it's really a pretty secure way to go. So here's my FreeNAS install. As you can see, there's the initial install. Now the default, it's going to boot here. This is after it's booted up. And I actually did, like I said, I created a separate drive, connected it to this virtual machine, and then I provisioned it. And I'll show you where that's located. But it's really, I mean, the current release is not super lightweight. It used to be a lot lighter weight, but it's still, relatively speaking, is pretty lightweight. And maybe you don't need to use the latest version. Like the latest version is only 64-bit. But let's say you've got an older laptop, you just want to play with it. You could certainly install the 32-bit, a previous version, which is 32-bit. Probably going to get 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 of the functions or features that you're looking for. Maybe you're not interested in doing decompression. You're not interested in doing or deduplication or compression. So you don't need a big, powerful machine. But the cool thing about FreeNAS is that it supports that. If you have enough memory and you want to, let's say you set up a share on FreeNAS for documents, and it's business documents or whatever. Maybe you want to definitely do compression, right? Because those will compress really hard. But maybe you also want to do deduplication. If let's say you're backing up several machines and you got duplicate copies, it would save a lot of space. And I mean, this is deduplication, right? This is a feature in a lot of enterprise storage systems that cost a lot of money, right? And it's available for free, open source. So here's the console. That'll look like this. So let's say you're running headless, right? So there's no video card. You can connect SSH and see this. Connect by SSH and see this. So you don't need to have a video card in there. I do, in my server, I lucked out, I saw some video card on Allegro for like 20 zlotys. And I was like, okay, cool, it should work. And it's working. So I just have one just to have one. But I was running it headless for a few months after I installed it, after the initial install on the server. So here's, like I said, here's the console, right, where you can see different stuff, and it tells you what the IP address is, right? This is just some, what do you call it, non-public IP address, right? Yeah. So if I go there, go to that address. Oh, hit the wrong button. So it's letting me log into this virtual machine version of it. And we can dig a little bit deeper into the interface. So storage is going to be the first thing you go to. Look, I created a 20 gig virtual thin provision disk, and it found it and it provisioned it. Of course, there's no redundancy or protection here. It's just one disk. But just just as a play, if you're just going to play with it as a virtual machine, it's perfectly fine. Services are here, so if you want to turn on different kinds of shares, like CIFS, or Apple File Share, or NFS, or SSH, or Trivial FTP, whatever you might need, or iSCSI, there's iSCSI, right? You would turn it on here. The plugins, I showed you the plugins. it takes a while because it's going to start looking for that list that I showed you before. But here's where you go for the plugins, and you could pick one and install it. Jails is usually you have to go to, that's why I say each one of these plugins you gotta just read what the people who created them says. Usually you create a jail first, then you go to the plugin and install the plugin into that jail, and then you assign storage to that jail, right? Or whatever the process is, but you gotta just follow the process. And all these guys have done pretty good documentation on how to do it step by step. That server that I have has 8 network interfaces because it was a WAN accelerator. Now I haven't tried to access the other ports, but theoretically it should be possible that I could do link aggregation, right, using the right router or switch, and you know, just imagine. I mean, I got 4 cores doing just this, right? So if I needed more bandwidth, I could do link aggregation, and hopefully it would be something I could use. But for right now, I don't need it. The wizard is the setup wizard. If something goes wrong, you want to go through the setup wizard, you can go here. Of course, the reporting stuff talks about, you know, all the stuff you could see there. System information, we were there already. Oh, updates. You know, this is really, I mean, fantastic. I mean, to me, open source has come a long way. I don't know if you guys played with it. I mean, my first playing with open source actually coincidentally was a FreeBSD version 5, I think. I saw it for $35. The BSD, so the true Berkeley software distribution, was $1,000, and the FreeBSD was available for $35. So I called up this thing. I said, "What's the difference?" You know, whatever. The sales guy is going to try to sell you $9.99, right? I said, "Just send me the $35 one." I was really excited about it, and I couldn't get it to work because it wouldn't recognize my network card. And this is, you know, back probably 1996, and I was like, "Yeah, man, open source sucks." Because it just didn't work. I mean, everybody was saying, "Oh, it'll work on an old machine. You know, it definitely works on these old machines," and I couldn't get it to work. So I was really kind of frustrated with it. But, you know, fast forward, oh my God, like, what was that, 20 years? Okay, fast forward 20 years, this stuff's working now. So, it's pretty phenomenal. Really, that's all I kind of have. I don't know if any questions. There was a caller. You had a question for us?
Oh, you mentioned that.
For how long are you using the FreeNAS?
Probably, well, I mean, the first use case I did in 2008. So I just used it for a couple of weeks just to get this HA pair going. As I was just playing around with it. I wanted to get it to work. So that's when I started playing with it. But more recently, probably around March of last year. So almost a year.
And was that a reliable solution?
Yeah, it's been very reliable. It's very reliable. I mean, I'm not running this 24/7 because it's on a dedicated piece of hardware. This 1U, formerly known as Riverbed 1050, you know, appliance. But you know, whenever I fire it up, it fires up. It boots up. Everything's there. You know, it probably takes about 5 minutes to fully boot because it's got not only FreeNAS, but also the 2 plugins, and well, the two or 3 plugins that got to fire up or jails. And then once it's up, just, you know, turn on one of my Plex apps or whatever I want to do, and it's connected. Oh, real quick, I mean, you don't necessarily need to use FreeNAS for this, but a 5th use case was, I've got some Apple servers, and I don't know, I'm probably on the calendar to do another presentation on how I took a $150 2008 Apple Xserve server and turned it into a $4,000 Mac Pro equivalent for like $500, all in, right? But so I have these servers, and I created a share, an Apple share, and I put the virtual machines there, so VMware machines. And then I'm sharing off the server these virtual machines in an Apple Share folder. So that's another thing you could do, is like if you wanted to put your virtual machines in some central location, and then when you fire it up, so you don't have to store that, you know, virtual machine on your local hardware. So that's something I've been playing with and using along the way also as another use case. So I mean, look, it's just storage, right? So I don't necessarily have to use FreeNAS for that. It could just be some file share, right? It could be. But the performance of the FreeNAS over the network has been phenomenal, man. I mean, I've got these servers are older. They're SATA 2, so they top out at 1.5 gigabit per second per drive. It's a 3 gigabit per second interface. So I mean, it's actually kind of slow, right? And even though I have a gigabit network, so it should technically it's slower, it actually feels faster for some reason coming across the network because I've got 4 drives running in this RAID configuration, and maybe that's why it just there's no hesitation. It's just blasting it out. It's probably not faster, but it just feels faster because it's this response time. It seems to be faster over that Apple share. So yeah, it's been very reliable. I definitely recommend it. If you just wanted to start small, like I said, with a virtual machine like I have here in this what's on screen right now, I mean, it's a great way just to try it out, right? It doesn't cost you anything. And then if you decide to either take an older machine or even a new machine or a new old machine, whatever it is, and dedicate it to it for your lab or for your play, whatever, I definitely recommend it. So,
Okay, thanks.
you're welcome. You had a question?
Yeah, you mentioned that hardware write is discouraged.
Yes.
Do you have any kind of measures between hardware write and ZFS?
I haven't done any benchmarks. You can find benchmarks out there. It really is going to depend on the controller that you have. Like if you wanted to run RAID 5 with some really beefed up RAID controller, you might get better performance. I don't know. For instance, on the Riverbed, there's no RAID controller. It's just a SATA 3 interface for 4 drives. So I guess theoretically, I could be getting 6 gigabits per second per channel. I don't know what I'm getting. Actually, I never measured it. But, again, that appliance was specifically built for WAN acceleration, right? So it was built for hard drive access and reading and writing and doing all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, so it's been built. It's like a commercial enterprise. It's an enterprise quality server, just with my own. I think they're WD green drives. I need to even go with the red. Just WD green, 2 terabytes. I think I paid $85 each for them. They actually sat in my closet for 2 years until I knew I was going to do this. I didn't know how or why or what. I mean, but finally, once I got it, I used them. So the thing is, like, if you combine RAID 5 with ZFS, what happens is if the RAID controller card detects some sort of error, it messes up ZFS because ZFS would normally correct those problems. And since I'm not doing it, it's not an issue for me. I didn't really look into it deeper, but I know that if you go into these forums, you can see it'll cause a problem. It'll cause a problem. Like it'll overcorrect for it, or actually it could invalidate the drive if there's a RAID error, because the RAID controller will flag an error that it would fix or whatever, but then ZFS does that automatically, would do that normally. It throws it off. So it's just don't need it, don't use it. And actually it saves you some money, right? There's no reason to have it turned on. If you have it, in the system, just don't turn it on. And it's working fine without it. So I've had no issues, knock on wood, and I really recommend it. So,
Another question.
yes.
I've seen somewhere on the console jelly locks. Does it mean the encryption of the storage is possible?
Yeah, you can. I'm pretty sure you can encrypt their storage.
Never mind.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I'll look into that. But I would, if I was going to guess, I would say you probably could encrypt it. I don't see why not. Any other questions? Who's considering trying this?
I am. I've tried this, but
Okay.
I didn't know about the plugins, which is really cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. And the thing is, I mean, not necessarily that you would want to do this, but I've seen instructions in the forums where you could actually do a virtual machine. So like you could actually install Windows as a plugin, or in a jail. You can install Windows in a jail on the machine, and then you can remotely connect to it, let's say through VNC or something like that, or remote desktop. I mean, whatever, for whatever reason, if you wanted to do that. But I think there is a I think there's a template here for VirtualBox. So there's VirtualBox. So you can, so you could run Windows in a VirtualBox on Plex. I mean, for whatever reason, maybe you want to, and then you can remotely connect to it to do whatever. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. It's just pretty phenomenal. Really, whatever your creativity, can come up with. So I consider this really kind of like a Swiss Army knife for storage, because you can see all the different things that it can do. All the different protocols that it supports, from iSCSI to AppleShare to SAMBA or CIFS to trivial FTP. I mean, it's like it's all right there. So once once you have it up and running, you have all these blades, tools that you can access for whatever you want to do. So, anything else? Nothing? All right. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Hope this has been helpful, interesting. And any feedback, appreciate it.
I have one
Thanks.